Lindsay.
Hello, Shera.
How are you, my friend?
I'm well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. It's been a good week, I think, in general. Lots of interesting stuff all over the place these days. What about you?
It's good. The long weekend was quiet.
Oh, good.
Quiet, yeah.
I heard you forgot.
Just taking self-care and mostly work, I guess. So
Uh-huh.
that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
Maybe
good.
didn't do much because it was also so hot over here. So stayed
God,
stayed in the
I don't know. I don't know how you do it. Yeah, but it's a dry heat, right? That's all
It's
that
a dry
matters.
heat. I'd rather have dry heat, to be honest
True.
with you. So yeah.
Very true. All right, we're not going down an hour-long rabbit hole of humidity
No.
versus non-humidity and all of that good stuff. And lucky for me, I didn't mess up the time thing again, so we started on time, which is an achievement from last week. So let's just see what comes out of this week. I'm not even gonna even think about it. I am really excited about our episode today. Our guest is an old friend, someone I'm not old. That's not someone I've known for a while. We met in another working life. And unfortunately, had a very brief moment of working together, but she made a really big impact in my life. And so I'm really excited about kind of what we're going to talk about today and kind of delving more into this conversation around what is good leadership and what does it mean and what is our place in the world and how are humans first and all that good stuff. So I really love all that.
Me too. Can't wait to dig into it.
All right, well, we will get started. I want to say welcome to the Glass House, where we look at business from the inside and the outside to expose the gap between what's embedded and what's embodied, something we talk about a lot. I am Shera. I am the founder and chief momentum officer of Engage 3D.
And I am Daisy Watkins, founder of DW Conceptz and LumaPath.ai. I always have to say, in business today, if AI doesn't see it today, you don't exist.
It never gets old. If you are here today, we want to thank you. You have loads and loads of options and you chose us. And we really don't take that lightly. And that's not just if you're here live, if you're watching us and repeat, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn or the website, or now you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts. Please rate and review 5 stars. I have to say that every time. I'd love to get a few of them going. Even if you don't, just rate and review and tell us how terrific we are because, it helps. And before we go any further, it would be my dream if this were truly a conversation with all of you. Unfortunately, we don't have that mechanism here within the LinkedIn framework. So we really want you to comment throughout this episode. Give us your thoughts and ideas, drop in your questions, share whatever you want to tell us, because we really do want to make this more of a conversation and not just a broadcast. So whatever you can do there, we would really appreciate. So let's get started, right? Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No. That's it. Let's do. I'm looking forward to it.
Yay. Okay. So I have a question nobody really typically will ask out loud. What if the system really isn't broken? What if the system works exactly the way it was built and designed? And what if the only problem is that thing was never built to look for the thing that matters most? Right? I love that thing, right?
I like that, yeah.
A system only surfaces for what it watches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's take healthcare, right? Healthcare learned to watch cost. So cost is what it sees. Change management learned to track adoption. So adoption is what it counts. Neither one ever learned to watch whether a person was seen or whether the change was actually lived. And we can't fix what we are not looking to find. And that is where we are today.
Very interesting. And here is what makes this moment for it. AI now reads an organization actually. AI now reads what an actual organization actually lives, not the story it installed on its website. Okay, ask it what a company is truly like as a workplace or as a place that delivers care, and it answers from what people live, not the brochure. The blind spot Shera is naming is not hidden anymore. It's public.
Yeah, so you and I just did an interesting thing before we came live about an hour ago. We were doing some prep, and I wanted to just for giggles, wanted to see what AI is telling about something, right? Doesn't matter what it is. And I asked you to go into one of your LLMs that I've never used, that you don't, and I said, look up this, what did you find? And the person that I was expecting to find, because this person is claiming to be an expert in a particular area, nowhere to be found. Has a website, has a LinkedIn profile, is out there communicating, nowhere to be found. So I thought that was a really great example. And to carry that a bit further, efficiency is embedded into every system we build, whether a human is seen or not, embodied in any of them. The strategy is embedded, being lived isn't. That is the gap of this whole show and what we want to talk about today.
I love this topic. And here is what I sit in from on the outside, okay? The gap does not stay inside the building anymore. The moment it opens, it starts writing itself into the public record. The reviews, the forums, the version of the company that AI hands to anyone who asks. The inside can manage the message, the outside keeps the receipts. So last week on episode 22 was called Leadership Theater, where we looked at the show us a leader puts on when the room is watching. This week, we go one layer down to whether anyone inside the system is seen at all. So tell us in the comments as we go, where have you watched the outside name gap and the inside kept insisting was not there? Make sense? Right. Nothing's hidden anymore. And so all these things that we see, if you're at the social media, you see all this, and then you're to AI and you follow those feeds, little tips and tricks on what to do so AI can see you. Those are all valid. Most of them are valid, but they don't stay consistent because the true story lands in how AI connects all your stories. So
I love that. I think that's great. So we're going to dig deep, right? And our guest today has landed on one line as the center of her work. Before most of us can be helped, we need to be seen, right? Adrienne Seal is an executive coach and the founder of Spirit Tree Consulting. And she spent more than a decade leading organizational development inside one of the largest companies in the country before she started her own coaching healthcare and service leaders. And she coached healthcare and service leaders through burnout and transformation. She has designed change from inside the system, and she has watched that same system lose the very people it was built to serve. She has lived it on both sides. Adrienne Seal, welcome to the Glass House.
Thank you.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. What a nice intro. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in full transparency, right? You and I obviously talked in terms of our prep and what we were going to talk about. And the thing that when we talked about how do we want to bring you onto the show, what do you want to introduce? What are you passionate about? You mentioned to me, and this was so funny. You mentioned to me, and I'll let you talk about it. This phrase, "Suck it up, Buttercup." And I was like, wait, what? I mean, I've heard it before, right? But what is that context? And you also said to me, and the expression you love is that you hear all the time is the train has left the station, right? These are things that are kind of on repeat. I've got a few of my own that I could do. It talks about what's broken in the systems, right? In the organizations, even inside the people. And so I just want you to, spend a little time, introduce yourself. What brought you here? What does that mean for you, right? And why are you passionate about this?
Sure. You mentioned my previous life, right? I was in organization development in a CPG company. I did a lot of large transformational change. I actually really loved that work. It was really, really interesting. I actually loved the front end of that work when we were really setting up a project and a program. And while I was there, I got introduced into coaching. And what I realized while I was doing that, hindsight is 2020. But when I look back at that time, I realized that you were talking about how change can move quickly, right? We're creating designs that aren't necessarily fixing the right problems sometimes. And that's because when we enter into change, we move quickly. Like we make a decision and we move. And so there's not as much time given to it to discern what is it that what's the impact, what's the implications of it. So at that time, when I started shifting into coaching, I realized that the thing that really was interesting to me was leadership. Because in change, leaders are a huge and important part of that. And if they're not embodying it, if they're not really taking the time to not just lead change, to manage change, but to actually prepare for change and understand the change and all of its impacts, then they're actually creating, they're creating a system down the line where they're actually not even able to think, like they are in reaction all the time. So I discovered that my passion was less about doing the systemic kind of project management change and more about working with leaders. And that's how I shifted into leadership. And in that process, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a lot of biotech and medical here. And I started really discovering that that's a passion for me. And then at the same time, on a personal note, my family was going through some things. And so we were really embedded in the healthcare system. And so I could see it from both sides, being someone on the patient side and and knowing the provider side. And that space, there's such a gap today around how healthcare is delivered and how people are being seen and treated, that I think it's an important discussion to have. And in my journey in all this, just recently, the term "suck it up, buttercup" came up because there's a documentary called that, and it's amazing. And it is something that really talks about the provider experience and sort of where we are in this moment where we're living on both sides of the system, inside the system and outside the system, from a place of, and with that, for lack of a better term, but it really is true, trauma, right? So lots of pain, things that don't give us the space to really look at it. Because when a system is traumatized, we're working in reaction. When a person is traumatized, they're working in reaction. So that was a really fast way of putting why I'm in this space today, because I think it's really important. It serves my sense of purpose. So I want to see change.
I love that. I want to give everybody an opportunity, if they want to check out the documentary, click onto the QR code, or there's a scroll of the website, or you can just, obviously Google it. It's really fascinating. Listen, we're not necessarily here to talk just about healthcare, right? It's a much bigger, healthcare is one symptom of this, right? One output of this idea of, if we don't know to ask and to look for it. I used to always say, I can't possibly know what I don't know. Right? If you said to a blind person who's never had sight, explain to me what a giraffe looks like. Right? I think, or anything for that matter. I don't know why I go to a giraffe, but if we never look for it, if we're not seen, we're never going to be able to find what's wrong. Right? And healthcare is one of the most, and I think in California you have an especially difficult problem, but I think that it's a glare in many areas, but it's a glaring example of where there are issues. And Daisy, I know you've spent years in healthcare as well. So this is not to, again, we don't want to get into the whole healthcare thing, but this is something you're familiar with as well.
Absolutely. There's always something going on in healthcare, whether it's recruitment of nurses, which is depleting right now, as far as, where we're pulling the people from there. We're bringing people from overseas now, because a lot of our local nurses, or what I call, in the US nurses, I don't want to generalize everybody, but since COVID has become prima donnas with the type of money they were earning, they were expecting the same type of money from those. And they were noticing that they wanted lesser hours. So they were going more into private practices, right? So they don't longer want to work the longer shifts when they can be working shorter shifts, right? And then in reality, it also has changed. Nursing has changed, where because before, in the past, from my personal observation, we were taught to care for people, because it's your passion. You really want to be of service, really, right? It's just being service to others. That's why people chose that with integrity as well. And then it became where it became monetized, where they become travel nurses, and then they were getting, tax-free money, their lodging being paid for, their meals being paid for, everything was being paid for, and it became business. So they started negotiating for better pay rather than What type of hospital is it? What type of patients do you have? What type of care do you provide? Do you have the best equipment, medical equipment to support the patients? Those have been, and as we bring those pool of people, those were the things that I was discovering. Has it changed? It's been a couple of years since I really touched that space, but I don't think it's changed. There's still a big need from people that are in my past that are saying there's not a lot of pool of people out there.
Can I put a lens to that might be a little bit different, a little bit more? So a lot of my work since 2019 was with the VA, right? And so healthcare, and I know we're not necessarily just talking about healthcare, but it's a good example. So healthcare at the VA versus healthcare outside the VA, private, public healthcare, right? There was this perspective of when all the cuts happened a year ago, right? When all the fork and all that happened, right? And I remember looking on LinkedIn and seeing comments of, oh, well, they can do better outside the system. They can find more money. They can, it was very focused on how much I can make. But my work with the VA was they didn't go to the VA because they're less than. They didn't go to the VA because it was just an opportunity. They went to the VA because it was mission driven and they could practice healthcare. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the same kind of bureaucracy that you had outside. They could focus more on the patient. I mean, it was a real reason. And they're, when you ask them, well, why are they there? What are they serving? They said they have two things they serve. They serve the patient, a really complex patient group, and the Constitution, those two things, right? And so it was a very interesting conversation, and it had, and they didn't leave to become travel, like that didn't happen because the system was allowing them to do what they care about most. Mm-hmm. So money as a kind of incentive, that part, it comes into play when we are already dissatisfied, when we're already feeling like we can't do what we want to do, right? Yeah. Money becomes golden handcuffs in spaces when we're like trying to figure out, well, if I have that, what can I can use that to do what I really want to do, versus people working in spaces where they are feeling their mission, their sense of purpose. Money comes with it, but it's not the end all be all. It's not why they're there, right? And so that's the difference. And so, and so nurses who you were talking about who are leaving, they were leaving a system that was so stretched and so difficult for them to do, and nurses especially, because they're really focused on patients, right? When they can't spend any time with the patient, when they're treating it like a mill, mm-hmm. right? Even when they were trying, and like I coached somebody who was trying to raise safety issues in the operating room, in the OR, and in the and was seen as a whistleblower versus someone who's trying to make a change for the better. And so this whole whistleblower kind of piece to this is another way of not listening, not seeing, right? To me, when you bring up something that is a whistle that something's happening, why aren't we listening to the signal, not from a place of, hear no evil, but from a place of, oh, we should hear that. We should understand it because maybe we can do something about it. And then my other comment, Shera, when you opened, you were talking about systems were already, right now we design them with efficiency in mind. And my question around that is, mm-hmm. what is that doing to our systems, right? Why are there places within systems that shouldn't be efficient?
So I would assert that companies will say that they have designed with efficiency in mind, right? When I think about ERP implementation, any kind of software implementation, we want to be efficient. We're buying this software to be more efficient, to drive more of whatever it is that we're doing. I think my point in that was the systems are doing what they were designed to do. Because if we don't ask what else do we want, what else do we need, what could be different, kind of in the same light of this whistleblower thing. And whistleblower kind of denotes something really negative is happening and somebody's telling a big, deep, dark secret that nobody knows about. I don't think that that's true. I think that my experience is that people are afraid to ask the question nobody's asking for fear that there will be a repercussion of kind of taking it offline or doing something that'll somehow derail the trajectory of whatever was happening, right? And I'm being super, super vague here, but the idea that if we are working on a project and the goal of the project is this, right? We're going in this direction. And I have an idea and I say, but wait, we could also do something else. There's an automatic, I think, gut reaction in corporate America, in corporate in general, that says, well, we don't want to do that. That takes us off track of what we're trying to do. It doesn't matter what more it could do, what more it could bring, the additional value that could bring. And I'll use myself as an example of this. When I was in HR software, and I would sit in a room with, the C-suite of an enterprise company of 20, 30, 50, 100,000 people company. And they're looking at getting really efficient and getting better HR software and sometimes other things as well. And so I would ask a lot of questions. Why are you doing this? What do you want to achieve? What are your challenges? Let's talk. And I would start talking about them. And I would have somebody from my company yelling at me, directly or indirectly, saying, shut up, just sell them the software.
You actually used the term like on track. That's where the train has left the station.
Right. But in my mind, I'm thinking, kind of to what you're talking about with the VA, I'm thinking, here's an audience for me, an audience that is really excited about bringing great value to their organization around something that I'm offering. So I want to offer more. I want to be able to tell them all the amazing things they can do in their organization. I want to help them build the business cases to what it can bring for them. I want to do all these things, but the goal of the people sitting next to me, right, is to get them to write a check. That's their efficient model, right? They don't care about anything else. And I'm not saying it's that any of them are any better or any worse, but their goal, what they're measured by, what they have to produce is getting the client to write the check. Theoretically write the check. That's it. That's all they care about. So in that scenario, right, where is the benefit to them for me to do what I love and what I'm good at and what will help my client? We're almost fighting each other at that point because they don't care if they're helped anymore. Move on.
Well, yeah, you're not on a shared goal here, right? You're not agreeing on, you're each being measured by different things that are actually in conflict with each other. And that happens all the time, which is why providers in healthcare feel left out, why patients feel left out, like because generally when it has to do with like profit, that wins, right? Profit margins, profit, that wins versus, and it's short-term, by the way, it's a short-term win because later we end up having more issues, right? So
we're getting some great comments. First of all, I want to say hello to Heather in New York City. And we have another LinkedIn user. So whoever wrote that, please let us know who you are because we can't see names for some bizarre reason. We don't know who this is. And it makes me crazy when that happens. Heather is saying the client wants to spend the least and vendors want to earn the most. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, but I think the client wants to get
the richness of the conversation is in, and the richness of what you can have happen and the spark of creativity and innovation happens not in those two, and not from those two things, but from the actual value of what you're trying to bring into the organization, really, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I when I was doing OD work, that was a really big frustration because I was the person who was always raising the questions, and questions were shut down all the time.
Right.
All the time.
Our LinkedIn user, whoever that is, I don't know, is saying the exact same thing, right? We're all, so at least I appreciate that because now I don't feel so bad, but yeah.
So working with leaders, I find that I can open up that question. I can help when we start talking when I have one-on-one coaching with leaders and they have that space, we get to a place of honesty, right? They come up with like their own, they're already conflicted. And it's very hard as a leader to be in that role of leadership and not react to the pressures around them. And so being able to have a space to have an honest, thoughtful conversation to understand like their beliefs and their feelings about all of this, they often don't have the time to do that. And so that's to me where change can happen.
I love that. Daisy, sorry.
That's okay. So let me ask you this. You talk about OD versus, there's obviously OD versus, organizational development, if people are not aware of what OD is, versus, change management, right? And so we've had so much conversation about change management. Organizational development is also another part that people, I think, intersect as one with that change. Are you seeing, where do you see the biggest gap is like they don't have a plan for organizational development and then implement change, or do they put change first and then decide what the organizational development is? I'm just very curious how that stacks up with your experience in the outside world.
Well, back in the day when I was doing organization development, I was generally in the position to be on the people side of transformational change. So when we're talking about change, there's the program and project management side, which is the one that puts the plan together and all that stuff. And then there's the OD side, which was how do we understand how do we really think about it more strategically and think about the implications? I will tell you, I remember vividly like project managers and OD people in the same room. Like if that relationship doesn't work, we're always in conflict with each other. But if we look at it as, and by the way, I did process work too. So that when we looked at it and said process, one big piece of process is people, then we start to have a richer conversation, right? So the implications, thinking through the long term, really trying to listen, right? Like what this is what will happen as a result of this change. And, in organizations, change isn't always good for everybody, right? Some of it is good for some and not for all, right? And so here's the suck it up buttercup piece, right? Often when a large scale transformational change is rolled out, right, there is a piece of it that's like, just suck it up. You're going to have to do it for the greater good. And, that makes humans feel dispensable. Like that makes us feel unneeded, unnecessary, unwanted, right? And I get that that's sometimes change isn't good for all, but if you then if instead you go to them and say, let's really understand that the change we're implementing, and maybe we can't change it, what can we do? Because humans are problem solvers. Humans have critical thinking. Humans can, they can be part of the change. I remember working on a transformational change in HR where somebody literally was on the design team who designed themselves out of a job and said, I get it. It makes sense to me, and not that I like it, but at least I know it and I can think about like what's next for me, right? So it was interesting when we look at humans as capable and smart and problem solvers, they rise to the occasion. They will rise to the occasion, which is why I ended up working as a coach, because to me, the individual is where transformation really happens.
I say this a lot, and I'll say it again because I think it bears repeating. Change is not about the thing that is changing. It's not about the new technology. It's not about the new process. It's not about the new team. It's not about the new structure. It's not about the new design. Change is only about the people. And the thing that is changing, if it is not embodied by the people that are going to use it, run it, do it, feel it, it becomes irrelevant and has no value. And so the understanding that what, in my opinion, in my experience, what leaders need to understand is we need to know, are the humans ready for the change? Maybe, maybe not. We can work on that, right? We need to understand what communication really is. I think that, and I've said this so many times, it's not an email or a town hall or a video that goes on an intranet or something like that. It's real conversation. And to your point, it's having an understanding of what's really going on. And where we are as humans most afraid is when we don't know what's going on. That is the most fearful moment for any human, being unaware of what's next. So for that example that you gave, the woman that was in the room, was working the strategy, was saying, wait a second, I've now walked myself out of a job. Great, not ideal, but it's easier to take in and figure out what's next. And I think that when we keep looking at change as training, I mean, I just had this conversation a few hours ago with somebody when we said, and she's also been in the change business, and she said how frustrated we are. She and I agreed on this, that we would talk to companies and they'd say, we need change management. And I'd say, great, let's start day one. Let's, and I was in my early stages of developing change embodiment without knowing it and really trying to get in and focus on the humans. And they'd say, yep, we need training. And I would look at them and say, training is not change management.
Well, it's the end of it.
It's not even that. It's not. Right.
Yeah.
And this is mostly tech, and we don't need to do this. Right. This is not the thing that we need to train. And so understanding that, and like you said, not saying to somebody, just suck it up. You got to do it. We're getting this new system. You just got to deal with it. You'll be fine. That doesn't instill confidence and respect. And Daisy, and I think you said at the very beginning, or Adrienne, you said it, people don't leave companies because of money. Not really. They leave because of their managers. They leave because of leadership. They leave because they don't feel valued. Now, I will say when somebody's paid a minimum wage and a small amount is significant, that's a different story. But for most people, they're not leaving because of money. It's just not happening.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
And there's some that were happy with the job, but the money enticed them, like, oh, I'm going to get more money. As soon as they leave, they know the first thing that I hear from after they leave a month or two later is like, ooh, it's not as wild. It wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be just because of the money and the status and the title that I have. It's either so boring or it's very political that, they'd rather not make that much money. And so when they come back and we counter, then they think that, are they going to stay or are they not? So it all depends on the situation. But people that leave because they think the grass is greener is always greener.
Well, and I think that's such an important question, because the reflection here is, our lives are short, right? Who are we? What is it that really wakes us up in the morning and gets us going? And why aren't we doing that every day, right? Like, why aren't we figuring that out? And when we start asking that question around what is our sense of purpose, what are our values, what are the things that we would not sacrifice in order to and what fulfills us every day, that changes. Work becomes not work. Work becomes something else, right? And Shera, when you're talking about change management, I hate the term change management. If we're managing it, we're reacting to it.
Right.
But if we shift that to change readiness, then we are asking questions. Then we are engaging with people from a place of curiosity, right? And that's my whole job as a coach, is curiosity, right? Like, I can't assume what other people need. They tell me that. I partner with them on that. But to me, that's that inquiry. That space of inquiry is where the best stuff happens.
Well, and I love that. So you talk about coaching through burnout, right? That's a big area in which you focus. And for me, when I was developing change embodiment, I talk about MIA, right? I'm looking for motivation, intention, and attention. Because in any kind of transformation, burnout is one of the biggest signals and one of the biggest problems. And it is catastrophic to an organization, especially as we are now having an expectation around transformation that's happening exponentially more than it ever has. And we can, talk about AI, not talk about AI, but I keep saying AI is surfacing things, again, exponentially faster because the demand is so much more, right? We're moving at paces we've never moved before. And so when I look at MIA, and I came up with the line, which I'm so proud of because I'm not a marketing person, but I think it's so cool. And I say, when MIA drops, people go MIA. Right. And that, that little thing came up. And that's because if we're not paying attention to those three things, right? What is their motivation? What is their intention? What is their attention? How do we ensure that they are working well? Because again, when we look at a typical transformation program in any kind of organization, could be people, could be process, could be platform, technology, the people that are usually brought in to work those programs are the subject matter experts, are the people that are their best and brightest, because they want their information, they want their knowledge, right? So now we're taxing the best and brightest, the ones we value most, by telling them, you're going to do this other program. And by the way, yes, you're still doing your day job. And I just said to someone yesterday, there has never in my 912 years that I have been working in change as a whole, that somebody didn't come to me and say, I'm not coming to your meeting today. I'm not getting on this call tomorrow. I have my day job to do. I don't have time for this project anymore. And that, it's already too late at that point. That person is on the way out emotionally and psychologically in terms of what they're doing. But that's what traditional change management isn't looking to solve, right? It doesn't look for that. So it's not going to find it at all.
You're talking about honesty.
Yeah, that too.
Right?
Exactly.
You're talking about people feeling like in psychological safety, the willingness to speak up.
Right.
You're talking about people feeling empowered, not hopeless and helpless. So when we talk burnout, right, there's burnout where people are just tired. We used to talk about burnout in a very sort of surface level way, but burnout actually leads to trauma. We now have a traumatized workforce, right? And when we think about that healing is very different than just being, I need a vacation kind of thing, right? And what you're talking about, that crux is where that intersection is, feeling like we have something to contribute, feeling like you are interested in what I might have to say. And you are giving me choice. You're giving me a choice. Very early on in my career, this is probably not I was given there was a big merger of organizations, and I was really unhappy. I was in grad school at the time too, so I had this other thing going on, but I was so unhappy. But I went to work every day, and I was a misery to work with. I'm sure of it. And my boss came down to me and said, "You can stay here, Adrienne, but if you do, you got to change your attitude. If not, I need you to leave today." Like today. And he gave me like a severance, right? It was a short severance. I was really young. And I sat there for a minute going, wow, I have to make this decision really fast. And yes, I need the money. And no, I can't I can't come to work and do this every day. It's not what I love doing. And I left. And the moment I walked away, this huge weight came off my shoulder. And I respect that man to this day for doing that with me. Because he put me at choice. I mean, it was a tough choice, but he put me at choice. He said it was my decision, right? And at that point, we have to ask ourselves, how do we embody the decisions we want to make within a change? Is it aligned with who we are and what we want to do? And I knew my North Star was somewhere else, and it motivated me to want to focus on it more. It actually shifted my attention, to your point, my attention to something that needed my attention. So I think that's important. And it was done with a level of respect. So it wasn't shamed or blamed or anything. It was, there was look, you're here. I get it. And I want you to be at your best here. But if you can't be at your best here, be at your best somewhere else.
Right.
Now, as you coach these leaders and as they realize kind of what they've embodied, I guess, or what they have, the growth that they want to see, or as they want to move forward with whatever part of their life they want to move into, are there gaps between what they're embodying versus what they're showing in public? You know what I mean? Or what's visible in public for them to be seen as that person? Meaning that, how do they translate that so that people can realize that they have these not experience, but that they have these characteristics or these skills. I don't want to even just call it skills, but internally they have this inner drive. Like, how do they now present themselves if they are one? And I know we have a lot of people here that are probably looking for work or wanting to do a transition with their jobs. How do they now translate that to be seen outside rather than just sitting in front of you as the coach? How do they now translate that in the outside world so that they can be seen in that respect?
Let me see if I can answer that question. Let me see if I understand that question. Well, generally, when people are coming either they're brought to me in an organization to be coached, or they come to me needing coaching, is because there's already that disconnect. Okay. I am not showing up the way I want to show up. How do I do that? Right. So it's their goals, and it's not my job to tell them how to do it. It's my job to help create the space for them to explore that in themselves and understand, like, what beliefs are driving that.
Mm-hmm.
What are beliefs about themselves are driving that that disconnect between how I'm showing up and how I want to show up. And then we get to that place. Well, if I want to show up, what do I need to do to change? Really good coaching is about personal transformation. Right? I have to believe that people can change. And there's a lot of people out there that don't believe people can change. But I have to believe, because of the work I'm doing, that people want to change and they can change. And when they're feeling that disconnect, it starts with transactional things that are happening with them transactionally, that they are like, it's just not working right. Like they're not showing up the way they need to. But it gets under the surface when they start talking about, well, I'm feeling this. What are the feelings I'm having? And if I get even deeper on it, what beliefs are telling me to act that way? So when we look about the greater systems, right, that are out there that are putting pressure on us to be a certain way, and we're not aligned with that, often we just follow that in organizations because that's what's expected of us. But the more you do that, the more disconnected you are to who you are as a leader. We're not cookie cutter leaders. We're just not. And women, okay, let's just really talk about this. Women in leadership, for the beginning, when we first started entering leadership, we were trying to be men. And then we started to realize that's not how we want to lead. So we had to deep down go, well, what do we bring about ourselves into leadership? So it is that creating that I'm probably saying it, congruency between who we are and how we want to show up, and the evidence of it out in the organization.
That's very true. Well said, Adrienne. And then the other thing that I heard from what you were saying is that there's beliefs and then believing, right? And there's the feelings, right? And so if you break that down, I feel like I don't believe is different than I believe that this can be done is a choice, right? It is an action item. And so I think people associate this believing or disbelief, or I don't believe in that, as hopelessness, but it's a believing that it can be done as a choice, is an option, is a choice, versus, oh, I'm afraid to do that because I believe that's not right. So that again, that becomes a different story. So the framing of the word is very, very critical on how we associate the form. I personally have associated feeling of belief versus I believe this is going to happen. This is doable. Is a choice and actionable versus the feeling. So I just discovered that. And so when you said that, I'm going, okay, it's not just me that I had an aha moment this last couple of days. So thank you for that.
Well, there's other things that, my work in coaching is around emotional intelligence, and also energy intelligence. And what I mean by that, our emotions provide us signals that have an energy profile in us that tell us things, right? Mm-hmm. And when we connect that with our executive functioning, it gives us a whole new opening of things. And I want to address this. You have to believe others can change, but the person has to want to change. Generally, what I find is people want to change, but sometimes they can't feel like they can't change. And the space that I create when coaches create, not just me, coaches create when we're working with people, is the place of experimentation for them to feel safe, for them to feel like they can get to know themselves better, because the world wants us to be cookie cutters. It really does, especially in work. And so having a place where they can think and not live in the constant reactivity of work, right, gives them a chance to rediscover themselves, to sort of and that gives them the motivation to go, if I have that sense of purpose, if I understand what I really want, then I'm going to want to change. I don't know how many leaders I have coached who lost their sense of purpose along the way. And when you ask them that question, they can't answer it. They have to, and that's part of the work. So what would happen if you figured out, who you are and why you want to do what you're doing? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it leads them directly back into what they're doing and doing it better. And sometimes it doesn't, but that's the space. We never know what's going to happen. The other thing this space does is it creates a space where people feel worthy. They feel worthy of these thoughts. They're not blamed or shamed. They can be here, and they feel worthy in having this conversation. I mean, I also have this experience where people come to me apologizing, and I'm like, there's nothing to apologize for here. This is the space. I mean, you'd be surprised what happens inside a coaching session with leaders, right? Because they don't get that opportunity to do that ever.
I would agree with it. The interesting thing you talk about this notion, you're doing it on a one-on-one basis, and I will extrapolate that to what's happening at a corporate level, right? So if you're giving them the space to question and to know, we talked about this earlier, the idea of knowing more and feeling safe in their role in their company. When a company says, hey, we're going to have this new technology, we're going to change our processes, we're going to change our sales team structure, we're going to change whatever it is that they're going to change. If the individual feels safe in their environment and they feel, they're going to say, wow, that sounds interesting. Okay, let's go. But the immediate response is going to be, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. Oh my God, especially with tech. When I was first in technology about 15 years ago, I guess, when I was first selling tech, every CIO, because systems were on-prem, right? We were moving them to the cloud. That was the big sales pitch. And every CIO with whom I had a conversation just would curl up the minute I talked about the cloud, because they had built these teams. These teams were their people. These teams gave them power in the organization. These people were the ones they managed, and they could say, hey, for my team, I need this. It gave them a place in an organization. And when we go in and say, by the way, you're going to be able to get rid of all these people because we're going to move you to the cloud and you don't need to do it. And they would just be like, they would shudder, right? It's no different now than AI, which, by the way, Daisy and I were talking earlier, all the big tech guys in AI are now completely 180 on it's not going to take away your job. It's now not going to take away your jobs. So that whole thing has shifted now, which is another conversation for another day. But I think that holds true at an individual level, but that also holds true. And the responsibility of a great leader is to make their people feel safe inside their organization so that they can feel free to accept what's coming and question it and be involved in it.
Well, and what you are talking about as well is the definition of power in an organization.
Right.
Right? Is power hierarchy? Is power control over? Is power energizing people?
Right.
When we think about power differently, if we think about the power to help people think creatively, the power to support dreams, the power to that becomes very different than I get my status from having power over you.
Oh, that's a whole different thing. Yeah, for sure.
And then it's a whole nother thing of there's power. That's a whole other conversation that I'm sure we all can relate to with one way, shape, or form from our former bosses. So.
Well, we started this by talking about what is the system doing, right? Is it doing what we designed it to do, right? We've kind of circled back around to this. And Daisy, I'm going to turn this over to you to give us our outside story in, because it's really speaking to, I think it's a very, very big story right now that's happening everywhere. Everybody's talking about this, but I wanted to take a little bit of a different viewpoint on it and relate this story to exactly what we're talking about. What are we looking for, and how are we going to find something that we're not looking for, right? So Daisy, I'm going to let you introduce us, and then we'll move on it from there.
Absolutely. So every week, as Shera mentioned, we bring in a story from the outside of this room, because the Glass House is not about just the three of us. It is about what is happening out there in the real world. To the people watching this week, the story is mine to open, because it is a story about AI and is one that has stayed with me. Shera, you take it from up. So anyway, I'll read the story here. A man named Derek Mobley lost his IT job in 2017 and started applying. Over the next few years, he sent more than 100 applications to companies that run their hiring on Workday's AI screening tools. We don't want to talk about that right now. And he was rejected every single time. Here's the detail that stops me cold at this point. Okay, at this point, he was already working at Hewlett Packard as a contractor, and he applied to the system for a consultant role that mirrored the job he was doing right then. Okay. He was rejected without an interview, rejected for work he was already doing. What finally made it click came on its own. When a rejection landed on 1:30 in the morning on a weekend, no human sensed that email in that hour. A machine had been closing the rejected roughly 1.1 billion applications across the period at issue. Billions of applications we're talking about. Nobody was reading that number for the people it filtered, because looking was never the job of that
Right.
machine.
Yeah. And so this is the Mobley versus Workday case. It's everywhere in the AI sphere right now because everybody's saying it's an AI problem. We're not going to get into the specifics of that, right? And I have my own personal opinion on this, having worked in HR technology, but that's for another day. This whole episode is this in a different suit, right? It's a system. This system did exactly what it was built to do. And that is the thing that mattered. What mattered lived in what was never built to watch, right? And I'm going to make sense here. He was rejected for a job he was already doing. That's not a hiring problem. It is every organization that installs a system, trusts the dashboard, never goes looking for what and who it's quietly costing. Now, we have to assume something here, right? This is active litigation. We don't really know what's going on. This is going to continue to be all over the press because everybody's picking up on it. But as I mentioned, my experience in HR technology is that these tools are judged on speed and cost. This hit both, right? It validated everything it was supposed to do by processing someone, irrespective of what it was supposed to do. Right. And so what is really the return on intention of what that tool is supposed to be doing? They fixed the platform, right? They put in a new system. It's running clean, but look at the cost that now has happened, right? And the work is really the problem that it was never built to show, right? And what it was supposed to do. So again, this could be a 3-hour conversation on this one alone. But we're standing, I think, on the edge of what is going on now as we get technology, as we bring technology more and more into the mix, and we're designing for what we think we want and not asking the question, what are we really looking to achieve? And if we're not going to ask that question and look for more, we're going to end up with a lot more like this, I think.
We talked about this, I mean, going into this conversation went a whole different direction than I expected. But what I would say is, I think that's such a bigger topic, right? And the topic, again, goes back to what I believe is we aren't going to fix what we can't see, right? And we all have that experience where things are happening so fast now, including, I'll go back to medical, right? Where your doctor gets your tests, they send you an email, there's no context, right? And so I've had this happen where I got some test results and my doctor sent me a prescription and I was like, but we haven't had a conversation yet. Like, what the heck, right? And I went to a different doctor who sat with me for 3 hours and we realized that it wasn't going to be fixed quickly. We needed to figure out more stuff, right? We have to be more discerning about what we're looking for than just taking face value off of a piece of data. Data is very important, and I think it's incredibly important to have data-informed decisions. And there's context, there's history, there's all kinds of things. There's this guy with his job that he's already doing, right? Right. It just misses it because it's not looking for it.
No. And it probably isn't on his CV because people wouldn't necessarily put a contracting job on their application, right? They're maybe working for a staffing company or doing something else. So it may not have known to connect the dots, which again is another conversation that we can have. I think what's funny about what you said about the test results, I just went and just had regular blood work done and I got the results. And what did I do? I started Googling everything, right? And it sends me into a frenzy because I don't know what it is that I'm looking at, right? What's going on? What's happening? Is this a problem? it's just the amount of information we're given and the context in which it's related and knowing what's good and what's not good. And that's human. That's all human.
Well, and it's putting a lot of expectation on individuals.
Yeah.
And to sort of self-guide ourselves into expertise that most people have, doctors went to 8 years of education for, right? I've had this conversation with my husband, like, well, why do we have doctors then if we're going to go to WebMD, right? Like, but there's a reason, because a really good doctor will sit with you and get to know who you are and be able to understand the context of things, so that they are looking, so that they can see and are helping to look for what's really going on, right? And it's not driven by cost. It's not driven by efficiency, which our systems are absolutely done, in the US especially, are doing. It's putting the patient at the center. So if we put humans at the center, how does that change everything that we do?
Right.
I want to add that, this outside story happened in 2017. So this is even before this AI burst. We've already been using AI. I just want to clarify to a lot of people, the AI is just not now. This has been going on for years. So that's why this technology for, these systems have been in place. But we never understood, like, and Shera, you came from this world. You sat there and how to make things faster, better, ROI, less people, you can do the work for you, right? And so I think at that time it was more about just automate, because now we're capable of doing it. We have all these things that we can connect together. We discovered API, you know what I mean? So, the system can talk, and then we can add more layer to the technology, because now, that's how they monetize. And so I think we have to realize that this has been an ongoing problem even before this AI thing, and that it hasn't changed, that leaders still need to look at things inside and outside. AI is just another layer that makes it very, very visible to everybody and more efficient to come up with thinking or solutions, perhaps with another brain. That's how I look at it. And so I want to be very careful. I want to just emphasize that people blame AI for what we understand it today, but the root problem has always been what is going on in the organizations, who you are as a leader, from where Adrienne sits, and how do you translate that to your people and to your organization. And now, so I think I think that's my big takeaway from this, is that doesn't matter if we talk technology, people relate AI as the problem today, but it's always been a problem since, and that's why we have these conversations.
I agree with you. I mean, I joke and I say, and I just said this a little while ago on a call. I said, when the cave person came into the cave with the wheel, somebody yelled, "Oh my God, you're going to ruin the whole world! How did you invent? Why did you invent?" I mean, it's human nature, right? When the Industrial Revolution started and they started using machines to do whatever they were doing instead of using the cow to pull the thing, and oh my God, the guy that has the cows is upset. We're always going to disrupt something. Mm-hmm. I think to your point, Daisy, it's happening faster, right? AI has actually been around for a very long time. We call it AI now, but we've iterated on that in machine learning and different ways that we've talking about in the tech industry. And it is happening faster and faster. I love what you said, though, that really struck me was this idea of why are we doing this? Because we want to automate, we want to be more efficient, we want to make it faster. To what end?
Yes.
And that's where this episode really comes in. What am I going to get out of that? Right. So a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, when the conversation first started by all the AI and the tech people that said, you're going to get rid of all your people and it's going to be amazing because it's going to be cheaper. And yes, I'm going to this now. And it'll be so fantastic because you get rid of all your people. And so now you'll have all this efficiency, and won't this be great because AI will do all the jobs. We know it can't do all the jobs. We know and now they're saying, oh, no. We didn't mean that. Why? Because the market didn't like it. And the economist said, if you get rid of all the people, who's going to buy your stuff? And people are like, so they're getting ready to IPO at $1 trillion to make more trillionaires in this world, because that's just what we need. And people are saying, no, we don't want that. So now it's a 180 to, oh, no, that's not what we meant. It's just going to make everybody better. It's going to make everybody more efficient. They're going to have time to be more strategic. Well, what is it? And the other thing that we learned, companies learn very, very quickly, I'm one of them, just for myself, is, AI is great. And guess what? The more I use it, the more it costs. Costs more.
Yeah. I mean, what you're basically saying is we have to keep asking ourselves why at the beginning, right?
Right.
Because if we ask why, if we're doing it for efficiency, well, why? Like, what is it really getting us for that? Why? I mean, that's true of anything, any kind of change. We have to think both inside and outside the organization. What's the implication? Like when we outsource, we're going into whole, but when you outsource manufacturing, well, it kind of killed a lot of towns, right?
Yeah.
So at what cost, right? So
I had a client who came to me one day. I was working with this client over weeks and months and building the business case as to why they should buy, as I like to refer it, my bag of crap versus somebody else's bag of crap. And so, we were going through the process, and at the end we won the deal and it was very exciting, whatever. And the client pulled me aside and said, "How are you so good at what you do?" And I was so flattered by that. And I said, "What do you mean?" And she was telling me all these things that she witnessed about what made her think I was really good at my job. And I said, there's two things. I am genuinely curious, genuinely. Like it's not an act. I am so excited to learn about other people and other processes and other companies. And I love to learn about other things. And the second thing is that I answer every question with a question. And when you say to me, "Can your system do this?" My answer is, why? Why do you want to do that?
because you're listening, it's a way of listening. It's another way of listening.
Right.
We don't spend a lot of time listening anymore. Everybody's trying to speak so that they can be heard. And while I believe that we want to see people, right? Like I think that's very important. We need to listen to them. We're speaking over each other.
Yeah, and people have their own made up, that they already have opinions about something, right? It's a good example. I was really, really quickly. I was in this networking event. They asked me, "What do you do?" I'm in marketing, and I don't elaborate too much because when I start being techie about it, they kind of I lose them. And so one of the things I said, in simple words, "Does AI know your business exists?" And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Do you know that if AI is talking about you correctly, or is it lying about you? Or what do you mean by that?" I'm going, ChatGPT it right now and come back to me. I'll be right there. Right. And then she looks, she goes, I'm not showing up. I said, "Well, then AI doesn't know your business. That's what I do." And so all of a sudden she goes, "What's your back?" And all of a sudden the question was, "What's your background?" And I said, "Well," and this is where I always, in the beginning, when I first started to do this, I felt like I was defending myself for switching or for discovering something that I am now passionate about. And so I was in healthcare and mostly in the HR staffing world, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, "Well, that's a switch. How did you do that? And why this switch? And how did you become a marketer instead?" I said, "Well, is it more important what my background is? Is it more important that I show results and I have clients that I'm doing this for?" And she said, "I guess the latter." And I said, "And so why was the question about what my background was about?" And said, "I will tell you exactly how I got into space." And I told her, my transition from CEO, I saw everything, blah, 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 blah. I said, "It doesn't matter where I come from. What matters is I have a purpose right now." To your point, Adrienne, my purpose is to help businesses be seen and be talked about properly by AI. And my purpose now, it doesn't matter what my background is. My background got me to where I am today. And now I am producing results. And so when people do transition and they're afraid that people are going to judge them from one industry to another, it doesn't matter. We all say this, we all know this. It's your passion, it's your integrity, it's your experience and your authority that gets the job done. So I walked away from that person and she came back, "You're right, I'm not being seen." So just a couple of little tips for other people. If that's my little tip for you, is if you're outside talking to people and they start questioning you, just tell them, "Can you look it up, please, and see what you see about me?" So anyway.
I love what you just said, Daisy, because I will tell you that as a coach, I coach people that I've never done their job for. And people are always asking, "Well, how do you know how to?" I don't need to know what you do. You need to know what you do.
Yeah.
That's not my expertise. My expertise is being able to help you figure that out yourself.
Right. I so love it. And Daisy, you gave us, I don't know if that was your action item for this week. That was your action item for this week. Well, mine was going to be really simple because I just want to make sure we get it. And it'll be up on LinkedIn on Friday. I post these every Friday, so you can come back to them. But mine is something anyone can do, right? Not just the person that's involved in a change in an organization, but pick one person and ask them what is quietly broken and what is going unseen where they work, right? Ask a friend, ask a colleague, ask your boss, ask somebody, right? And then do the hard part, which is to actually believe them, to listen, as you said, Adrienne, to listen to them, to give them space to talk about that challenge, because change can never be embodied until the people feel seen and are accepting what's different, right? And so getting that conversation started, asking that very simple question will just get it started, because we sometimes are even too afraid to ask.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, listen, we have taken so much of your time. We are so over for today. As we always say, we could absolutely have this conversation for, I don't know, days and days and days and days. I want to give everybody an opportunity. Adrienne, I want to reach out to you to please connect with you on LinkedIn. And if there's anything you want to mention about what you're doing, a little more about what you're doing for our audience, that would be great.
I mean, my space is coaching, leadership and executive coaching. What I didn't talk about is my other side of that is parent coaching. I do a lot of that as well. They are separate but integral. Isn't that interesting? Parents and leaders are often the same people. Anyway, and my focus is healthcare. It's a passion of mine. So I really, really want to help providers and people who work in all kinds of people who work in healthcare understand that they are seen and heard, and they do an important service.
That's wonderful. That's fantastic. Also, we would love for you to reach out to us as well. Please don't hesitate on all of the things, all of the channels, all of the places. Daisy, I will turn this over to you.
As you can see on our screen, this is how you can reach us. We are both streaming actually on YouTube. Again, YouTube, LinkedIn, every Wednesdays. And the podcast is not live, but the podcast is on Apple. So please subscribe and join us in any of these channels. These are also where you can find us in both LinkedIn and all our other platforms. And we are also offering the Glasshouse cohorts, which we have different tiers for. So visit our websites for all that information, and more to come on that in the next coming weeks.
Fantastic. Adrienne, thank you so much for the time, for the knowledge, for the incredible insights. Thank you, everyone, for joining us every week. We will be back next week with a new guest. And we always say, if you want to be a guest, we would love to have you. Reach out to us and let us know what you're passionate about, and we will give you the space to have that conversation. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Thanks for having me.